I can't imagine. I couldn't imagine doing that. And it's like, we love it. We love the peace and quiet. We love the serenity. Welcome to TNT Homesteading. Join us as we continue to expand our off-grid life here on our 10 acres in eastern Oklahoma. Hey y'all, welcome to TNT Homesteading. This is Terry. In just a few hours from this very second as I record, we'll be speaking at the New Beginnings Homestead Expo in Nowata, Oklahoma. And this is video of our talk. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. So I'm Terry from TNT Homestead. My wife's back there, Tracy. She's the other T in the TNT. And we have been living off-grid for 2 full years. This is what we bought about 2 years, or 2020 actually was when this picture was taken. We bought this place July of 2020. This is a half a mile down the road from us. So we fell in love. It's 10 acres in the woods, completely in the woods. We didn't really intend to go off grid. It was sort of an accident. What ended up happening is when we bought our place, we talked to the ladies. They had the 10 acres right next to the road. And it cost them $5,000 to get electric installed just about 50 yards. Well, I pulled up my little Onyx map, and to even get to our property line, it was 5 times the distance. So you do the math on that, and all of a sudden you realize we could buy solar panels and batteries cheaper than that. And so we started going down that path. So that's what we did. I'm going to get on this side so I can look at the TV and talk to y'all at the same time. Sorry. Let's see. So that's what it is. Let me talk about what off-grid is. There is so much that you'll talk about on the internet about what off-grid is. And if you get on Facebook, come on, that's where we're currently at. If you get on Facebook, people will whine, moan, and complain that the fact that you're on the internet means you're not off-grid. What off-grid means, I'm trying to figure out how to back up, and I don't know how to back up. What off-grid really means, I may just have to do without all the rest of the slides, is you're not tied to the grid. You're not tied to the electrical grid. In our case, we're not tied to the water grid, the water system. We started off with 4 solar panels. I really wish I could get to that one. But we started off with 4 solar panels. Actually, we started off by carton boat batteries, deep cycle, ones made to charge and drain and charge and drain. We started off that way. We ended up carting them back and forth. When we'd go to the cabin, we'd go with batteries and charge them and run fans and lights, and then we'd go back. And that's how this all started. Then we decided, let's get some solar panels. That way we don't have to cart the batteries back and forth. Because those boat batteries, lead acid batteries like it's in your boats or in your cars, are heavy. So we started with 4 solar panels and a small charge controller and batteries. And then we got a few more batteries. And then we got a few more batteries. And then we decided to move off grid completely. We're just going to move here. And we sold our place and moved. And quickly realized we did not have enough electricity. When my wife's hairdryer it just shut the whole thing down. She don't use it often, but when she tried to use the hairdryer to get ready for church, I think it was, we lost power. So it became trying to figure this thing out. And that's what we did. We started figuring out solar panels, solar power, that kind of stuff. Because as they were just talking about a minute ago, self-reliance, which we probably 25% maybe, our self-reliance comes from electric and water right now. We grow a little food. We have our chickens. We have our gateway drug. But that's where, we're at. But it's sort of enjoyable when you're on Facebook and my power's out. Anyone else's power out? And, nope, not us. So it's sort of a little enjoyable to hear, when people back home in the Collinsville, Claremore area where we moved from, when they're having storms or their power's out or something like that, and we are perfectly fine. So We do have 16 solar panels, 200 watt. Started off with 4. I liked the 200 watt. That way, if something ever happened to one, it was cheaper to replace one than a bigger solar panel. Because again, we're in Oklahoma. You can have problems. You know, hailstones, if they're big enough, they'll break just about anything. So replacing was something I was trying to keep in mind. So that's where we're at. Our solar panels, we do have everything. We do have our air conditioners. We have two mini split. We have a mini split in both cabins. We do have 2 cabins. This is our bedroom. The other one's the living room, my office. I work from home. And so that's sort of where we're at there. We started off with a mini split in the newer building, the bigger one, the office. And now we don't run it 24/7 like we used to when we lived at home. You know, you'd turn it on, you'd set your thermostat, and you'd walk away, and you never really thought about it. You have to be a little more intentional on your power usage. You know, so, you know, I won't turn on the air conditioner until, well, in August, maybe 11, but I'll try to hold off as, you know, keep the fans going and just hold off turning on the power or the air conditioner. The bedroom, we would, between 6 and 7, we'd turn on, we had a window unit in there. And we'd turn on the window unit between 6 and 7, cool the bedroom down pretty good. And we had it on timer, just one of those little plug-in timers. And we had it go off about 1:30. But we had a ceiling fan above the bed. And so it would shut off and the bedroom stayed nice and cool. And we didn't have a whole lot of problems with being hot at night. And it's just beautiful. We're outside most of the time. Between our 2 buildings, we have about 400 square foot of living space. Now we intend on the other side of the property, we intend to build a house out there, but we'll have to clear the land. So we started where we were at. There was a cabin, there was that cabin, so let's start there. And we're working our way there. Maybe later this year we'll start clearing land for a house. There's a guy that owns some property between us and the river, Lower Illinois River, that I really hope he wants to sell before we start building a house, because I would like his property. But, you know, we'll see. Probably won't happen, but I sure would like it to. Anyway, of our 16 solar panels, we have 16 solar panels, we have 12 batteries. When it comes to batteries and you're doing solar panels, you've got 12 volt systems, 20 volt, 24 volt systems, 48 volt systems. You've got all this stuff like that. There's a lot to learn, and it was so overwhelming. And when I had to, all of a sudden, we're living there, and we don't have enough power to do the stuff we need to do, I went into analysis paralysis, and my wife got tired of it. She was like, would you just pick something already? It's like, well, you know, it's a lot of money. We did end up spending, all told, about $13,000. But at $5,000 per 50 yards, you know, that 5 times the amount, we're still under what it might have cost us to get electric ran to the property line. So that's been actually really good. And we may have done a little bit more than that. Those were some estimates that I was able to find out. So that's electric. We do have electric, but again, we don't run our air conditioner like we used to. For the longest, we didn't have a refrigerator. We went out of those big Yeti style ice chests, you know, the big thick wall. We had 2 of them, but we finally got a fridge. It was a little bitty small one, 10 cubic feet, maybe 9 cubic feet. We upgraded to a 15 cubic feet, I think. It's huge. Okay, it's not, but it feels huge when you come from a 9. But it's so much better than what we had with the ice chests. As they were talking, when you come to these things, we went to the Okie Homestead conference, and I was talking to, and I went blank on his name, but I was talking to someone that was giving a presentation on solar panels, because I'm always wanting to learn more. Is there something else I can learn? And I found out I wasn't draining my batteries enough. And so I can actually drain our batteries quite a bit more than what I've been trying to let them drain. So we might actually be able to get a deep freeze later this year, but we'll see. We'll also be able to run the air conditioner a lot more. So that's sort of what's going on there. There were tax credits. Each year is different. no matter who's president, each year is different. So I'm not, you know, if you're something you're interested in, there may be some tax credits. I didn't do it for tax credits. It was just sort of a bonus. I was doing my taxes and going through the computer program, and it said, did you install solar panels? And I'm like, well, yeah, check. And then I went for a mad dash. Where did I buy stuff? You know, what's my receipts? How much did I spend? So there's that. Water is the next big thing when we're off grid. You know, those are the two big things, your water and your electricity. If you're going to be off grid, those are the questions we get asked the most. I had a picture of it. We got a little redneck hot tub, the old cast iron clawfoot tub that eventually will have copper pipe going through a fire. But right now we just put hot water in it, and then we put a fire underneath to the bottom of the tub to just keep it warm. Keep it hot, actually, and that works really good if you're going to want a nice soaking tub. But we do have an off-grid shower. You know, we've got one of those instant hot water tanks, or tanks, I guess is what you'd call it. It runs off propane. It takes a 12-volt battery to run the pump, and we got right now a 30-gallon trash can that we keep water in. So we'll put our water in it, and it'll pump, and we can take our nice showers. Our showers, when we first moved there, were in a carport, an old carport that was there. It was just open wall. We'd hang a bag, and we'd take a shower with that. And now we've got like 3 walls, and my wife's made a pretty door, which I would have showed you a picture of, but I can't make that work. So anyway, we have some privacy as far as our showers are concerned. But when you live in the middle of nowhere, privacy isn't actually something you're really worried about. So we've got our showers taken care of. The next thing we've got, though, is bathrooms. There was an outhouse on the property. We used that for the longest. There is something we found. I don't know how my wife found it, but it's called a luggable loo. That's the brand name. It's also considered a 5-gallon bucket with a toilet seat. This one's made when it seals. When you close this toilet seat, it sort of seals it all up. You put in your shavings and whatnot, and there you go. You empty it about once a week or however it's being used. We bought a composting toilet for the bigger bedroom or the living room. I had pictures of this too. It's got 2 sections. It diverts the urine from the poop. We'll just, go ahead in that way. And that way, you sit down, and if you're going to keep hitting that box, you'd open the trap door, poop, wipe, close your trap door. But when you pee, it goes in the front section. That way you can you may need to empty that more often than you need to empty the back. But with ours, we had to take the whole thing outside and dump it, put in, we use coconut coir right now, but it started off with either coconut coir or peat moss. And it's just sort of damp and loose, and it helps dry it out. And that's how that's working. And both of those things work really, really well. As far as going to the restroom is concerned. When we do have family, though, they try to make sure they stop at a gas station before they come visit us. They're like, I don't know about that. One thing on the composting toilet, though, my wife doesn't particularly care for it. She'd prefer her 5-gallon bucket. Getting the, you don't want the urine in with the poop, because that's one of what helps with the smell. But finding that where do you sit on the toilet seat is a little difficult. My anatomy is slightly different, and I don't have that problem. But just in case you're thinking about getting one of those, it's just something to think about. They have lots of different ones. So, something to look into. As with most things, though, it was $1,000. We joked that as we were setting things up, everything cost $1,000. We couldn't come up with hardly anything with it. How much is that going to cost? $1,000. Of course it is. So it became our running joke of everything costs $1,000. We've had a IBC tote. I think most everyone knows what those are. It's the big white plastic jugs in the metal cage. We had one of those behind our shower shack. And we were catching water off the shower shack, which used to be an old chicken coop. But that's what we'd catch water from. We were using that for showers for the longest. And then as we started living there more, we started having our chickens, and we had to water And so we started using that water for the garden and the chickens and stuff like that. And we'd go home, well, before we moved there, but we'd go home and we'd fill up 5-gallon buckets, ones with the lids that you can close, cart them back and forth. And we were able to go get water, come back. We'd go to, if we went to town or going to our parents' house, we might get water there. I'd get water at those ice machines, 5 gallons for $1. My wife found the Love's Travel Stop had just a spigot by their RV clean out. And so we took our own hose. For a while they had one, but she disconnected their hose and put ours on so it's not someone sticking it in their toilet tanks. But we took our hose, and it was city water, but that's how we got some of our water for quite a while. Until this year. Until recently. The last month, I think. My uncle came down and we installed gutters on just about anything that had a flat edge. Last year we had 5-gallon buckets just about everywhere. If there was an edge, a drip line, we had a 5-gallon bucket or bigger, a 30-gallon trash can underneath it. So that was, last year we'd get the water and we did a lot of watering the garden. But a couple times we had to use water we went in town, city water, to water with. This year we now have the guttering. My uncle thankfully has a guttering company, and so we were able to, he came down and we bought the gutters, and me and him installed it. He showed me how, so I'm actually real excited that I learned a new skill. I love learning new skills. And so we've installed guttering, and we've installed more rain barrels. Now we've had rain barrels. We had the one IBC tote, and we had different rain barrels. We have, I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. By our big shed, we have an IBC tote there. On our living room, we've got 2 IBC totes that I've got connected together. We've got our screened-in porch. We have 70 gallons, 2 35-gallon rain barrels there. We've got a 50-gallon rain barrel at the chicken shed. We've got 40 gallons over by the woods, or actually 70 gallons, 2 different, rain barrels by a wood splitter shed. We just put a cover over our wood splitter. And all told, we have almost 1,300 gallons of water storage. So we're so happy. Now, this is all brand new. So this is, besides that first IBC tote and just buckets everywhere, this has just happened. During the big storm we just had, I can't tell you how many times I went outside and was tweaking the system because we were just getting it set up. I took half a day off from work to try to get my first flush system set up. And most of our rain catchment is a gutter on a roof that drops into a bucket. We've got like a screen protection, to try to keep debris out, but that's about it. All but one. Our living room, I really wish I could get the pictures working. Our living room, we went ahead and we put a leaf diverter on it. So both of our gutters, because it's that barn style roof, we've got gutters on each side of the building. One comes across and they both drop into a leaf diverter. And the leaf diverter, it gets rid of the big debris, any leaves that's come through the gutter, in our case, acorns, dead insects that might have landed on the gutter. It takes those and it throws the big chunks away. And then it goes into what's called a first flush system. First flush system takes, pollen. I'm sure everyone's car's been yellow for the last month, at least into the rain. On that pollen, bird pee, poop, dead insects, anything that's on your roof, when it first starts running, it all washes off. Well, you don't really want that to go into your drinking water system. And that's what we're hoping to use our living room tanks for, is drinking water. So it goes to a first flush. So that first amount of rain goes into a storage tank. When I was setting ours up, I miscalculated. I don't know what I did. I thought we needed almost 50 gallons of water on our first flush, which was a lot. So now I'm like replanning stuff, and I got it set up, but I had a few issues with it. And then I was editing one of our videos. We are on YouTube, but I was editing one of our videos. And as I was calculating for the video, I was like, wait a minute, we only need about 15 gallons. We don't need 50 gallons. So I got rid of the 50-gallon blue barrel that's sort of an eyesore, and we've got white PVC pipe. And it looks a lot better. Plus, we can paint it the same red color as the house, so it'll not look quite You know, I hope it'll sort of camouflage some. But on the first flush, they had two different suggestions. If you have minimal, what they call it, pollution, you know, if you live in an open field, you don't have any trees, you don't have any bird droppings, which I'm not sure how you manage that. You live in a clean environment, you only have to collect 0.0125 gallons per square foot of your roof. That's not much at all. For our living room building, that's only like 3.5 gallons. You wouldn't need hardly anything if you lived in a clean environment. We live in the middle of trees and birds, and so we don't have what they would consider a clean environment. We lived in what? Substantial pollution. I don't call it pollution, but you know, I get it. You know, we had lots of leaves and debris and bird droppings, and you could have dead insects. You could have all sorts of stuff on your roof. For ours, it does say 0.05 gallons. So for us, that's 14.5 gallons. So again, that's a lot. That's a big difference between 4 gallons and 14 gallons. But it gives it a chance to rain. It fills up this tank. And as it fills up the tank, there's a ball towards the top of it on the pipe. And when your pipe fills up, it pushes that ball to the top and it seals it off. And once the water is all down here and it seals it off, it redirects the water to your tanks, to your holding tanks. So that's what we've got. And then it goes into an IBC tote, and then I've got it connected with a pipe to another IBC tote. Both their valves are open, so as you fill one tank, it fills both tanks. So we've already gotten rid of big debris, and we've already gotten rid of bird poop and stuff like that. And so the water in that is pretty much just rainwater. We do intend to probably put a charcoal filter on it and a string filter, but we haven't gotten there yet because we're still tweaking the catching the water first before we worry about the drinking it. In fact, that wasn't even on this year's timetable. Everything we've been doing has been a timetable. You know, you had to do this. It's like, well, we wanted, like last year, we had to finish clearing in our solar field because everything, this we cleared out. It all looked like trees. So to have solar power, you have to have sunlight. Okay, well, then I had shade on my solar panels, and that was causing us problems. So I went out there with a chainsaw and just started dropping a whole bunch of trees. Well, we got more sun, but the ground's littered in trees. Well, if you're going to have a garden, you need sunlight. The only place to put the garden's next to the solar panels, but it's now got tons of dead trees. So I had to clear off all the dead trees. Then I had to make a place for the garden. And then we have lots of deer and all sorts of stuff. So then we have our garden knocks. You know, it's a great big, huge enclosure for our garden. And we got that done. Then we got garden planted, and then had to start working on wood for the winter because the previous years we've always had to buy firewood. Well, I had a ton of trees I'd cut down for the solar panels and for the garden. I don't want to buy firewood again. And then it was one story, then the next story, the next story, and it was always something else. So that's what was going on there. They do have calculations on how much water you can collect off of your roof. An inch of rain on our living room. Okay, this porch, we redid this. It's now screened in and whatnot. It's a little bit bigger. It's a 10 by 10.5 porch instead of this 10 by 6 or so. For that porch right there, we would get 65 gallons of water with 1 inch of rain. Wow is right. The bigger building, we get 180 gallons for 1 inch of rain. For the shed that we have next to us, which is, I should have put more tanks on it, we can get 225 gallons on our shed for 1 inch of rain. That IBC tote's full. All of our tanks are full except for the one on the living room. And that's because I had problems. I was still working on it. Occasionally it wasn't working quite right. And, you know, so it should have been full, but it wasn't. I was purposely not worrying about it because this was really the first big rain of the year. I've got more rains coming in the rainy season. So there is a lot of water to be had. If you garden, have livestock. I was at a talk at the Okie Homestead Expo. They were talking about your rainwater is so much better than your city water. You don't have the chemicals. There's people that can't take, I didn't even know this. There's people that can't take showers in city water. The chemicals in it breaks them out. They're allergic to some of the chemicals in city water. Now that we're back to taking showers out of our rainwater, I love it. It feels so much better on your skin. It's amazing. Heating. So we're off grid. We don't have unlimited electricity. Well, I guess we sort of do. We only have what we can store. So anyway, for us, our heating is wood. We've got a wood stove in both buildings. The biggest thing with our heating is the fact that you can get it too hot. Or overnight, it gets too cold and you wake up cold and you're like, shivering, and then you don't want to get out from underneath the blankets because you know it's really cold outside the blankets. We do have mini splits in both of our buildings now. Electric wise, they don't really use a whole lot more electric than the air conditioner. I said they had, and I was corrected, and then I went and looked, and I was wrong. It doesn't use a whole lot more electricity than the air conditioners do. It's a heat pump. So installing the mini splits allowed us to be able to heat it. The one in our the one in our bedroom, the smaller cabin, the one in this one is connected to Wi-Fi. And so while we're driving home in the winter, we could be visiting our parents. And as we're driving home, we could get about 20, 30 minutes out and turn on the heater. Because there's, you got those memory foam mattresses. And I don't know if any of you have a cold bedroom or not when you sleep at night, but if you lay on a cold memory foam mattress, it's like a rock. And it's cold. You go to jump into bed and it's like jumping on this floor. You sort of regret that. But you can warm up the room. There's been a few times we've gotten there and it's like, well, we got to let the room warm up before we can even go to bed. So now that we've got that where we can control it, that's made it coming home late night in the wintertime a whole lot better. We can also, again, schedule it to say, hey, come on at 7 o'clock and run until 1 and shut off. And we'll be playing with that mini split this year because, again, we installed that in December, I think, is when late November, early December is when we've got the mini split taken care of. For cooling, we use lots of fans. Ceiling fans, fans. We love our fans. We use them all the time because it's amazing how much a little bit of air conditioning and a fan helps. You don't need just air conditioning. We did that at our old house, when we lived in town. We'd have ceiling fans going all the time, and it just helped circulate the air and helped things much better, feel much better. We do have our mini split. We used to have, well, it's still there, but there was a window unit on this building. That's what we used. It was loud. It was noisy. The mini splits are super quiet. You can barely tell they're running. And so we're looking forward to taking that window unit out, but we won't be using it anymore because of the mini splits. We go down to the lake. We're just off of 10 Killer Lake down there around Gore, Oklahoma. So we go to the lake a lot. We've got a couple of kayaks, or we'll go kayaking, we'll go swimming, we'll go down to the river. That's the lower Illinois right below the dam. And that water that comes out of that dam is cold water. Just walking down to the river, you can feel the temperature drop even in August. It's a noticeable temperature difference. Food. Our problem with food is we live in such tiny buildings. We didn't have a deep freeze. At first, we didn't even have a refrigerator. So, before we always stored food in our freezer, our deep freeze. We didn't really have that. So food went to families, our daughter's fridge in Owasso, our freezer, our mother-in-law's freezer, my mother's freezer. We take it to our, the family, and that's where some of our food resided. I think now we probably can get a deep freeze. Canning. I took deer meat that I had harvested, I ground it, cooked it, canned it, shelf stable. And I'll tell you what, that stuff is amazing. You're running late, you're tired, what do you want? You open up a can of pre-cooked meat, you toss it in a pan, you warm it up, and you've got tacos. Sorry. So that really is good, but a lot of canning. We don't can a lot. My mother's always been a huge canner. We did get a canner from some friends of ours that moved. They majorly downgraded, and so we've got their canner. So we're looking forward to doing some canning. But food storage isn't a whole lot of difference if you're on grid or off grid. You've got the same options, freeze dryers and canning and deep freezes. We have the same options. It's just for us, it's a storage issue because we have so much less space. internet was sort of a thing to us. We didn't have the DSL line running to our house. We started off with Starlink. I really liked it. Now, the trees was causing me some difficulty because when Starlink's pointing up to the sky, it wants a pretty good circumference, and I'd get around the edges some trees, and it cut in and out, and I ended up having a little bit of problems, and they didn't have a whole lot of great support, and I ended up going to cellular. I was using hotspots a lot when I was having all the problems, and so that's where we're at right now. Is I'm on a cellular hotspot, and that's what our internet's at. I really want to go back to Starlink, but I need a few more trees down, so I'm just sort of, or the dish raised higher to get away from some of the trees. Because again, we've got oak trees, cedar trees, pecan trees, the trees. We just live in the little woods. Problems we had when we first moved off grid. We moved to a property that never had an address. So we had to set up an address. My wife took care of that. And then they're like, well, you don't want to mail there, do you? And we're like, yeah, we do. We're moving here. We want mail here. So that took some work, and we finally got that. Then they gave us a different address because they gave us the wrong address the first time. And then getting packages delivered, because I'm an Amazon addict, online shopping, not necessarily Amazon, but online, you can find what you want there a lot more than you can at other stores. I think everyone sort of found us now. I had one time FedEx, the people from where we were at, we had 2 deliveries the same day from FedEx. One came from McAllister. They found us, dropped off thousands of dollars worth of batteries right on the roadside next to where where they needed to drop it off at. We got a box there. That was expected. They dropped those off. We had another thing coming from FedEx, but wherever it shipped, it came through Tulsa. And we can't just drop it off at the road. And it's like, well, that's funny because anyway, it was a mess, but everyone's got to go. We got one of those big waterproof boxes out close to the road that most packages can get dropped in. So that works out pretty well. But our shopping, you don't just make a trip to town. The nearest, it takes us a half an hour to drive to a stoplight. The nearest stoplight from us is at least a half an hour away. A good grocery store is 45 minutes away. A good hardware store, besides the small town hardware stores, it's 45 minutes away. The stores next to us, the closest to us, at least hardware stores, they close at 5. So it makes it real hard to get to when you work a job. It's like, I can't even, it's lunch breaks is where I try to run to the hardware store. Again, part of that's just living away. Living away is the problem there. Not really, again, off-grid, but they all sort of intermingle for us. Wildlife. We've lost a few chickens to coyotes, and we've had some hawks swoop in. We've seen bobcats on trail cameras. We've seen a really big deer, a really big bear, probably about 350 pounds is my guess. Our dog was the size of his front leg. And I say his, it's probably a her. Big bear. Probably wouldn't attack the chickens, probably. But, there are predators. That's something we've had to work with there. We've got a section that is hardware cloth. We call it our enclosed run. We can keep the door closed and it's pretty secure. Hardware cloth, most predators aren't going to get into it. Then we have a bigger expanded run, which is more to keep them in, but it's done we haven't had any attacks inside of our expanded run. And then we let them free range in the evenings. Between 2 and 3, we'll go out and let them free range till dark. We tend to be outside more then, so we can sort of watch. Being off-grid is simpler. There's a lot we don't have to mess with, but it's not easier. I'm cutting trees and I'm splitting wood, and a lot here are planting your gardens. You do the garden anyway. We like to go fishing or hunting. I'm trying to get our food not from the grocery store if at all possible. We've started reading labels, and My wife's favorite road snack used to be Twizzlers. And then she read the label. It's not Twizzlers anymore. I don't know when last time she's had a Twizzler. She's shaking her head. She don't remember either. There's a lot of food we just don't eat anymore. You'll look at the label and say, no. When you are reading the labels, it's not always the same brand. There's a lemonade we like. It doesn't have any artificial colors. It's like the red comes from beets. But they're strawberry lemonade, red 40. So even if a brand that you're used to seeing is like, oh, this is good, and I can read everything on here, all right, sweet. The other kind next to it may not be the same thing. So, the off-grid goes back to what they were saying with self-reliance just a minute ago. We bounce back, for us, it was an accident. We really didn't intend to go off-grid. But as we've done off-grid, we've started realizing how dependent we were. When we lived in town, at least a week every summer, we'd lose water. We might have water first thing in the morning. If we didn't have a swimming pool, we wouldn't have had showers, any kind of baths, because by the evening we wouldn't have anything. When I first wake up in the morning and I'm an early bird, I could take a couple of gallons, get a couple of pitchers of water poured usually, and it was slow. They built up the areas, they brought in the houses, they built up housing additions, but they haven't increased infrastructure. Or they'd have water leaks and drain towers. But for years, we didn't have water for at least a week every summer consistently. It is crazy. We still got the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still had your normal bill plus your usage, and it was crazy. So we're now hopefully getting away from that. Now, again, our drinking water is still coming right now from the ice machines. You take your glug, 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 I don't remember what the brand, the popular brand is from that. Yeah, Primo. It's just one of those machines that you'd have at the office water cooler. It's one of those. We got 2 of those actually, but that's our drinking water. And it works. But hopefully later this year or next year, we'll be filtering our own water and drinking what we're catching. We're set up to where we can keep adding tanks, so we can have more and more tanks and not necessarily, hopefully we won't have to go get water ever again. That's, sort of where we're at. It's fun. We love it. One of the things my wife loves to say is she loves it and it's not for everyone. I couldn't imagine doing that. And it's like, we love it. We love the peace and quiet. We love the serenity. There's times she wouldn't leave the house. She won't see a person. Well, church Wednesday night and church Sunday, and that's the only time she'll see someone. Now she'll go to the grocery store, but she don't have to. Now I'm stuck at my computer desk, so I see people through a computer screen all the time, but there's, I may not leave the property. Everything we need for the most part is there. And that's what we're working on with the gardens, increasing the garden space and that kind of stuff. But we are working on some of the stuff they talked about, getting the community, finding people around us. We live in farming country. One of the people in our church, he grows watermelons and wheat, sometimes wheat. And I'm like, I need to see about some of those wheat berries. I'm interested in some of those. I want a grinder. Anyway, that's another story. Anyway, do y'all have any questions? I did not talk about keeping the batteries warm. In solar panels, there's different kind of batteries you can use. You've got your lead acid, that's your normal car, boat battery that most everyone's familiar with. You have, they called AGM. It's a something glass something. I don't remember what it is, but anyway, it's called AGM. And then there's a lithium iron phosphate, LiFePO4, LiFePO4, lithium iron phosphate. They are super light. I've got 12 volt, 200 amp hour. It's almost about twice the size of a normal 12 volt battery, and it's like half the weight. I love them. You can drain them to down to about 10% without damaging the batteries. With lead acid, you can only go to 50% without damaging your batteries. So the batteries are cheaper. Lead acid batteries are a lot cheaper. You can have a whole bunch of them. You can store them. but you can't drain them past that 50% mark without potentially damaging the batteries. From what I've been told, you shouldn't. That's what I've been told. Now you can have like lead acid from like one system, and another system have lithium. And when I say lithium, I do mean lithium iron phosphate, but lithium's easier to say than that all the time. You can have like multiple systems, a charge controller on one, because the charge controllers, it does ask when you're setting them up, what kind of battery are you charging? So there's something to do with how they charge. They charge slightly different, and that kind of stuff. So to go to what Tracy said about warming them, on the lithium iron, while I can take them down to 10%, I cannot charge them if they're below freezing. They have to be at 32 degrees or warmer, or above 32 degrees to charge, because charging them below freezing damages them. Some have built-in heaters. Mine don't. I didn't know about this when I bought them. You can get like heating pads, or you could, or mats. There's things you can do. If you're putting them, the lithium iron, they don't off vent. So that is one of the things. Your car batteries, you'd always don't put them in the house. Don't do this. You don't have that problem with the lithium iron batteries. So if they were in the house, if they were in one of the other houses, I wouldn't have this problem. But they're in the shed. It gets cold. So that's something we've been struggling with. I would love to build a root cellar and put them below grade. Have them in the root cellar. One, that gives us a root cellar, but then put the batteries in there. It keeps them cooler during the summer. It would keep them warmer during the winter. We don't have one, but that is something we had to work on. I've got business cards if y'all want them. I do have YouTube videos. Have a website. On my website, I do have talking about how to even calculate how much energy you needed. Because that's, at first, I'm like, I was reading the batteries, and I'm like, well, this is plenty. And then I quickly learned you can't just wing it. You can't just say, or some of the websites you can be on, I just want to run my refrigerator and a fan. How much do I need? Well, you can't answer that question from that information. Where do you live? How much sunlight? How much electricity does the refrigerator use? Each refrigerator uses a different, you've got those labels on the back. They all tell you what it uses. How many watts per hour does it use? So I've got spreadsheets that I've sort of calculated. They're probably about 90%. It's bits and pieces of information I'd gathered over the internet over the years. But I sort of walk through that spreadsheet and talk about it. That way, if you want to look at getting solar panels, maybe you want to put solar panels on your shed. Just something small to start off with, not do the whole house yet. Because doing the whole house, someone in our church, I'd like just the whole house. But she runs her air conditioner all the time during the summertime, and I don't think she really knows what she's asking for there. One thing I do want to talk about with solar power, though, is whole house systems and being grid tied. When you're grid tied, the big thing with grid tied systems is if you're making electricity, and that's what you hear people selling electricity back to the power company. When you're grid tied, if the power goes out somewhere, winter storm comes, thunderstorm comes, and then the linemen are out and they're working on the system, and it's a nice sunny day, even though no one has power, you do. You're making electricity, and if you're grid tied, you're sending electricity back down that power. And then you have a lineman come up thinking the lines are out and the power's out, and he grabs a hold of your lines, and now he electrocutes himself. That happens. So they have to have some sort of cutoff where you don't send power back up. So that is something you need to be considered if you are on a grid type system, that you take that into consideration if you're building something. But a standalone shed, chicken coop, that kind of stuff, you don't have to worry about it if you're not tying it into your normal power grid. Our system, the box, we can plug into a power system, but it doesn't feed it back out. I'm needing to double check that. But ours hooks into a generator. So, during, 5 days of it's when the hurricanes hit the Gulf, you know, and they come up, and here in Oklahoma, we were cloudy for 5 days, and we're running the air conditioner because it's hot, and you're going to drain the batteries. So you're going to have to start up the generator and add supplement to your power. You do generate electricity on cloudy days, just not as much. So sometimes you'll start up the generator, and then the same charge controller, it goes into the same charge controller into my batteries, from my batteries into the two houses. I had pictures, but again, it didn't quite work out that way. But anyway, I do talk about all that. I do have that on the website that talks about what you would need, what kind of batteries do you want, how many batteries do you need, how many solar panels do you need. If you know how much electricity you need, then you have an idea of how much solar panels you need to make that generation, that power. But you don't run stuff off of solar power, you run stuff off of batteries. Your solar power charges your batteries. Now you can run stuff off of solar power, but you know, a cloud goes by and you have no power. So it's really, you're charging batteries and you run off of batteries. Batteries is your power source, and your solar just does the battery. Any other questions? She uses the laundromat right now. Yesterday, I made a little YouTube short. We're using the latest in solar drying technology. She brought it home and put it on the clothesline, so we didn't have to do the dryer. We could wash some stuff by hand. I don't know if we've ever washed it by hand there. I have on campouts. We used to camp a lot. If you don't like primitive camping, you're not going to probably like living off grid. Especially at first, as you're still figuring stuff out, because every once in a while you do stuff. But we do go to laundromats. She may dry. During the winter, she dries a lot there. We do have a retractable clothesline inside of our living room, and so I can pull it across, hang it up, lock it, and then you got the heat going, and then you got the ceiling fan going. And we've done that where something didn't dry, and we've hung it up to finish drying it. We all thank you so much for coming and listening, and hopefully you learned a little something. You know, most of this is just electric and water is your biggest stuff. Everything else we do off grid is the same kind of stuff you do at home. So anyway, thanks.